Welcome to the channel. This is Oblivion, and in today's video we'll be going over the ultimate Mythic tier list. I'll be ranking 28 heroes from SSS rank all the way down to C. Let's quickly go over the criteria I used to rank them and who will be showing up on the tier list. Number 1. The only heroes on this tier list will be Mythic heroes. The biggest determining factor for how well a hero will rank is unique and powerful effects. I will be looking at how well each Mythic performs in the respective season, chaos season, and game modes outside of Ether raids like Summoner Duels or Arena. I will also be considering how many strategies the Mythic is viable in and how well they perform. Lastly, I'll be showing a build for them at minimal investment and max investment. Let's go ahead and get started. Because all Mythics offer some level of value via their Mythic buffs, I don't consider any Mythic E tier, so we'll be starting in C tier. C tier is composed of Mythics who severely underperform in their season and see almost no play in Chaos Season or any other game modes. When you see these Mythics as a bonus unit for the week, you typically cry on the inside. Let's start off with the Mythic I consider the worst in the game, Sothis. It's very unfortunate, but Sothis just does not have a role as a defensive Mythic. She doesn't offer really anything to the team outside of her Mythic buff, and does not do a good job as even being a frontliner, unfortunately. Her preference weapon just offers this encounter and some adaptive damage, and her preference special, Sirius, doesn't really do much to threaten the enemy team at all, just makes her a bit more annoying to kill sometimes. But even then, with her outdated stats, she's pretty easy to take out. Fortunately for Sothis, she is due for a remix, meaning that she might get one as soon as September, so maybe Intelligent Systems will bless her with a godly remix and she'll actually be a solid defense Mythic. But we'll have to wait and see. Next up, we have another anima Mythic, Lif, and Lif is in a very similar situation to Sothis, where he's another infantry melee unit, and he just does not offer enough to the team to actually be valuable. He does not do a good job as being a frontliner on the team, and even if you try to build him with this optimal build like I'm showing right now, where you'd use a far save to protect him, he still doesn't offer much. Deadly Balance does give him a little bit of power when combined with his power and special Open the Future, but even so, it doesn't offer enough power for Lif to actually take out any threats. At the end of the day, Lif wasn't a great Mythic when he was introduced, and he's only gotten worse with time. Next up, we have the god of death herself, Hel, and she is also in a similar situation to Lif and Sothis, where she is a melee flying unit. She just doesn't have the range or lethality to actually kill much. Her claim to fame is essentially being an annoying unit with her built-in miracle in her weapon, meaning that she can use something like Mystic Boost to be just kind of annoying and be difficult to deal with, but even then she's never really a threatening unit, as there are ways to get past her miracle. At max investment, Hel can be a bit more annoying, but even so, she's never really a deadly unit, and definitely never a unit you are scared to see. Our final Mythic in C tier is going to be Yoon, and Yoon is just one of these old, outdated Mythics who just doesn't offer much. She has a very horrible stat line even at max invest. She just doesn't have the power to punch through tanks nowadays, especially far save tanks. Her preference weapon does not offer much. It essentially gives her attack plus 6 and a guaranteed follow-up attack, but then she also has a bad speed stat, meaning a lot of times it will get denied. And her preference C skill, Chaos Name, is very outdated and just does not offer much at all, with essentially just being a better ploy skill, offering -5 to the unit's highest stat, which really isn't much at all nowadays. Fortunately for Yoon, just like Sothis, she is due for a remix and it could be hitting as early as November. B tier is full of Mythics who either are getting a bit old or do not have a viable team or strategy they strive in. These units can do their job and sometimes can even be quite good in the right situation, but they're rarely the optimal Mythic. You typically won't see this unit in game modes outside of Ether raids, but it isn't unheard of. Let's start with what I consider the worst offense Mythic in the game, Freya. Fortunately for Freya, she was just put into the wrong role. Freya really wants to be one of the main carries on your team, be one of those powerful tanks with her damage reduction and built-in distant counter, and with Binding Necklace allowing her to not only get more stats, but also steal the bonuses from enemies. But unfortunately, without being able to get Mythic buffs, she really cannot fulfill this role well. The other major problem is she doesn't fit into many other strategies as well. For example, if she wanted to be a Gale Forcer, she has a lot of things going against her, such as the fact that she wants to be solo most of the time, and she also doesn't have cooldown reduction built into her weapon. So even though Freya is an S tier waifu, unfortunately this leaves her as a B tier Mythic. After Freya, we have Throsir, one of the original super powerful Mythics. And unfortunately, Throsir is just starting to show her age. She is a Mythic who wants to be killing things, and she just doesn't have the stats or power that she once did. And this is largely due to the newer and more powerful units, as well as Farsave that has just become the most prominent thing in Ether Raid's offense. The other major downside is that Throsir is in the worst defense season, Anima, and this is largely due to the existence of Elamine who can shut down things like Catcher Balls, where Throsir could be very relevant as she could get up to 4 attacks in a row, which would be very powerful. Fortunately for Throsir, she is on the remix calendar now, meaning that she should get her remix sometime next year. Next up, we have the Fell Dragon, the original defense Mythic Duma, and this might be quite low for some people, but honestly Duma has a lot of things that are working against him. While his remix is quite good and did make him a much more powerful unit, and even Upheaval Plus add a lot of flexibility, and made it much more easy to snipe buildings, Duma still struggles to find a team he really works on. Let me explain what I mean. Duma's claim to fame is Upheaval Plus. This is essentially going to allow him to snipe a building in Anima Season. This can be a very powerful and an offensive strategy if you want to use something like a turn 1 strategy like in the movement meta we had before with like Legendary Sigurd or something like that. But the problem is that Duma doesn't really help outside of that. So while he might allow the strategy to actually work by sniping something like the safety fence, at the same time, even with the Wings of Mercy build, a lot of times he's not going to be able to contribute to the team itself. And this is largely due to the fact that he's a melee armor unit. So while he can pack quite the punch if he can get into combat, a lot of times he struggles to get into combat at all. Another team he could be very good on is a Bridal Catria team, where he could get a Brave effect, and with his true damage he could pack quite the punch and destroy a lot of enemies. The problem is, he's in Anima Season, where Elamine exists, and that is going to be shut down a majority of the time. And lastly, the third role that Duma really could fulfill is as a save unit. After all, he is an armor. But by doing so, you give up Upheaval Plus, which is really the thing that makes him the most unique. And because of that, a lot of times there's going to be better options for save units. We're just going to do a better job of surviving. So by no means is Duma a bad mythic, he just doesn't have a team where he really fits into perfectly, where he can really show off all of his strengths. A team where he can take full advantage of upheaval while also finding a way to get into combat and showing off all that damage he can really put out. So due to that, Duma's going to end up in B tier. Our final mythic in B tier is going to be my girl Altina. And unfortunately, Altina is just one of those units that people severely underestimate. The reason for this is Altina is the type of unit where you really need to invest to get her full power. So there are essentially 3 roles Altina can play. The first role being the build I'm showing you right now, which is by far her weakest, where she can just be a smite bot. And this really doesn't do anything for the team, and honestly it makes Altina one of the worst mythics you can possibly have, because she offers absolutely nothing except for a smite, which pretty much any other unit can do. Where Altina starts to show some of her true value is in a Gale Force team, especially alongside Thor, where she can come in with her Brave weapon, get 2 guaranteed hits, proc that Gale Force, and also destroy a lot of enemies. If you aren't running her alongside Thor, she can struggle to hit those heavy blade checks, but alongside Thor, who is an Astral Mythic, she does an amazing job and actually fulfills this role amazingly well. The final and best role for Altina is by far a Vantage Sweeper. The major problem with this is that it requires you to invest into Altina. She's going to need merges, she's going to need an attack boon, she's going to need Dragon Flowers to take full advantage of all of her power. But once you do that, Altina is an amazing unit, and this is for several reasons. First of all, she's a mythic who gets to be your main carry, which means you're opening up a team slot for another support, which is extremely valuable. Second, unlike other Vantage units, Altina has a Brave weapon, which is extremely powerful as she's going to be able to hit twice, and with the proper support, she's also going to activate Twin Blades, which is honestly a very good special, as not only does it give her a ton of damage based off her resistance, but it's also going to disable damage reduction, which is one of the major reasons why Vantage fell out the meta to begin with. And while Hardy Bearing was a prominent thing in the meta before, it has fallen off severely. So it's very easy for Altina to just completely Vantage sweep entire enemy teams with a bit of help, especially from Winter Bernadetta, who can easily get her into Vantage range. So while Altina can be amazing, she does require investment, and she's also very bad as a support unit, so because of that, she's going to end up in B tier. Now fortunately for me and any other Altina lover, she is due for a remix, and hopefully it will be hitting as early as January. A tier is full of powerful mythics that can do a great job in their respective seasons and can even be seen in other game modes, but they do have some weaknesses holding them back. Our first mythic in A tier is going to be Saros, our first 7th slot defense mythic. Now Saros is quite the powerful unit. She can pack quite the punch as well as take a few hits. But outside that and her mythic buff, she really doesn't offer any support to the team. Unfortunately, Wings of Light is just a very underwhelming mythic preference skill. The idea behind it was that it was supposed to buff your other mythics, but realistically you do not run that many other mythics on your defense team, maybe 1 or 2 at the most, and most of those mythics tend to not be offensive threats, instead usually being support or dancers. So this leaves Saros into a very awkward spot where she is a very powerful unit herself, and she can do a lot of damage if she can get into combat, or even act as an annoying frontline unit, but she doesn't offer the unique powerful effects that mythics in higher tiers do. After that, we have our newest anime mythic, Odor, and Odor can really do a lot of damage if you allow him to. Brutal Shell being pre-charged and being essentially a Luna just allows him to put out a ton of damage alongside his guaranteed follow-up attack. And unlike so many other mythics, he is a cavalry unit, meaning he does have 3 movement, which means he can get into combat much easier. The major problem with Odor is that he does have Canto built into his weapon, which can be quite annoying, as a lot of times he can go into combat, do some damage, and then just completely run away, reducing the threat range of your defense team as well as relieving some of that pressure. He is also weak to no follow-up effects, which isn't great, and a lot of times people will actually just switch out his weapon and put something like a Fire Sweep Axe or like a Hammer, just so that he can do some more damage and actually be more effective as a mythic. One of the reasons Odor is as high is he can actually be seen outside the Aether Race meta. He often can show up in something like Summoner Duels and do quite well. In Summoner Duels, Odor is quite the powerhouse. His pre-charged Brutal Shell allows him to destroy a lot of enemy units, and his Kanto is actually quite valuable as he can easily retreat to safety after destroying an enemy. If you're ever questioning just how good Odor can be in Summoner Duels, make sure to go check out Phoenix Master's replays, where he makes him look like a total monster. Next up, we have an Astro Mythic, Ashera, and Ashera is just a powerhouse unit. She offers a ton of support while also packing a literal global laser to destroy her enemies. Ashera is going to offer some buffing support, giving attack and resistance +6 to all allies within 2 spaces, but most importantly, Null Panic, which is extremely powerful as it can shut down things like Panic Manners or Panic Smokes, or any type of panic effect the enemy wants to inflict on you, which also means that you're free to use as many buffs as you want, which can really power up the carry on your team. While offering all this support, she also buffs up herself, which is nice because she does have a Blade Tome-esque effect in her weapon, borrowing power from her allies in order to do massive damage. This means a lot of times Ashera can deal with a lot of the difficult threats on the enemy team, such as powerful save units or even like annoying fallen Elgards who like to hide in the corner. While Ashera's firepower, Null Panic, and buff support is nice, she doesn't offer any kind of like crazy effects that enable strategies or any kind of powerful effects that cripple the enemy team. And because of that, she's going to end up in A tier. Our next Mythic is going to be Euler, and Euler is quite the powerhouse. She can just pump out damage and it's extremely horrifying. The problem is that she is an offense Mythic, and often you don't really need that much power on offense to destroy many things. Occasionally, Euler will show up and she'll like take out something annoying at the end of a match, but other than that, she doesn't really offer any support to your team, and she doesn't fit into very many strategies. Honestly, Euler would have been much better off as a defense Mythic where she could have really shown off how powerful she could be and like carved through a lot of the most premier save tanks. But unfortunately, she ended up being an offense Mythic. The real reason why Euler is this high is because she is amazing in other seasons like Chaos Season or in other game modes. In Chaos Season, she could be used in defense without any type of penalty, which is extremely nice, and she can just do a ton of damage, especially alongside something like Vital Catria, or if you want to switch out and use Summer Alincia's new Brave Bow, she can also use that extremely well. In Summoner Duels, she can be very threatening and she can take out a lot of the most premier far save tanks. So while Euler can be a very powerful Mythic, unfortunately the lack of viable strategies and teams for her in Light Season keeps her down in A tier. Our last Mythic in A tier is going to be Bramimon, and Bramimon was a complete menace when he came out. He was just such a powerhouse who could just carve through anything. And even though a lot of time has passed and he isn't quite as powerful as he once was, Bramimon is still a force to be dealt with. This is due to, first of all, Bramimon being a colorless mage, meaning he has great matchups against pretty much everything. Second of all, his preference C skill Impenetrable Dark. This is essentially going to turn off any supportive effects to any type of tank he's engaging into, which is very powerful because if units have become more powerful, so have their supports. So being able to turn off things like Flames or even Brave Lucinas can completely cripple the enemy tank, allowing Bramimon to just smash right through them and completely destroy them. The other major thing that Bramimon still has going for him is that he is in Dark Season, meaning that he can be on a Bridal Catria team, which allows him to have that Brave effect, which dramatically increases his power. So even with Bramimon showing his age, he is still an amazing Mythic and lands in A tier. And one day when he gets his remix, I am horrified to see what he gets. S tier has very powerful Mythics who offer extremely powerful support, fill invaluable roles on your team, and some excel in game modes outside Ether Raids. Let's start off with our first Mythic dancer, Triandra. And Triandra does fill that amazing role as a dark Mythic dancer. The problem with Triandra is that she's a little bit too bloodthirsty. With those high offensive stats, a lot of times Triandra will ignore what she's supposed to do, which is dancing, and often instead try to kill the enemy, which a lot of times will just screw over your entire game plan on defense and completely allow the enemy to take advantage of you. While Triandra can hit quite hard, she has nowhere near enough power to actually smash through the most powerful far save tanks we have nowadays. So more often than not, her bloodthirst does not actually help the team. She also has the downside of being in Dark Season, which means that she is faced against Milla with her isolation, and because Triandra's stat line is so optimized for offenses, she has a terrible defense stat, meaning she's very easy to isolate. One of the major things that Triandra does have going for her is that she is a dancer, which means she is combining two very important roles on your defense team of a dancer and a Mythic, allowing you to have more team slots to run more powerful threats. And she also has a very powerful preference dance, Frightful Dream, which is going to inflict -3 to all stats and most importantly guard on all foes in cardinal directions of herself and the target she dances. Because of this, Triandra can be a very powerful defense Mythic, though she does have a lot of flaws. Now we have our very first Astro Mythic, Naga, who also just got her remix, and Naga's remix made her a exponentially better unit. Originally she was meant to be placed much lower on this tier list, but because the remix was so good, she's actually become an amazing support and offensive unit to run on Astro Season. At minimum investment, Naga can at least be one of the best Mythic smite bots in the game, as Divine Fang is going to grant effective against dragons, attacking speed +6, and a guaranteed follow-up attack, which is very powerful. So you can run something like this build with defense as Link 3 and allow her to grant +6 to all stats to whoever she's smiting, which is some great support. She can also stack up life and death so that she can soak Bright Shine, which is also a great form of support. But that's not all. Her refine also made her into just an amazing unit. She got a ton of stats, being able to reach up to plus 13 to all stats with the proper conditions. Not only that, but she got a built-in improved Dragon's Wrath, allowing her to offer some true damage and get some damage reduction. This refine and remix allowed Naga to become an amazing unit, where she can do a lot of damage taking out annoying dragons, but also offering just some very powerful support, especially when we are heading into a dragon meta. But if that wasn't enough, the fact that she can give out a guaranteed follow-up attack also allows her to be very good on a lot of strategies like Gale Force, or if you just need some extra power for some of your slower units so they can make those guaranteed follow-up attacks and take out foes on the player phase. Overall, Naga has become an amazing mythic, and I can only see her value going up as dragons become more and more prominent in the meta. Dagger's up next, and Dagger is such a great unit. Not only is she a very powerful combat unit, as she has no follow-up built into her weapon, as well as a unity effect, making her a great unit to soak chills, while also powering herself up. Dagger can fit into a lot of different teams, as her resistance mythic buff makes her quite good on tanking teams, while she can also run builds like the ones I'm showing right now, and be amazing on things like Gale Force. And no matter what type of team she ends up on, she's always going to offer the invaluable Pathfinder support, which is really underrated on offense. It can allow for all kinds of crazy sniping plays, as well as great ways to retreat. That Pathfinder support does not end in Aether Raids alone. Dagger can also be seen in lots of other game modes, including Chaos Season, where she can just be another unit to add additional Pathfinder to your entire team, but also in Summoners where she can act as a frontliner and offer Pathfinder to like more mobile, more powerful threats behind her. Dagger is just a really great versatile mythic unit, and can fit into any team. Our next mythic is going to be our very first mythic ever, Air. And Air was phenomenal when she came out, but over time she has begun to show her age. Fortunately for her, she just got her remix, and it made her absolutely amazing again. There are lots of different ways to run Air. One of the original ways was to use her in Air Force, where she's essentially an engagement unit for Gale Force. Unfortunately, her new refine kind of worked against it with its built-in healing, but even so, she still can't fulfill that role. Personally, the best way I find to use Air is as a support mythic. She can just do an amazing job of boosting up that resistance on your tanks. Not only is she going to get 5 resistance from her mythic buff, she'll grant an additional 5 resistance from Sparkling Boost Plus to any ally who's above 50% HP anywhere on the map. She also does an amazing job of running a Tamari build, which can inflict another -5 attack and speed on the entire enemy team as long as she has higher resistance, which she can easily do by running something like a Phantom Res Seal. And last but not least, Sparking Boost Plus is also going to restore 20 HP to the ally that has been dealt the most damage that turn, allowing you to have remote healing on your tank, which is extremely valuable. Air is easily one of the most powerful light support mythics, especially for the tanking strategy. Last but not least, our final mythic in S tier is going to be Mirabilis. And while Mirabilis does fulfill the exact same role as Triandra, she does it much better in my opinion. Unlike Triandra, who's always bloodthirsty, Mirabilis will actually do her job of dancing, which makes her quite valuable, as she'll be able to combine 2 slots on your defense team, the dancer slot and the mythic slot, into one, allowing you to run additional units on your team. Not only that, she's going to offer a myriad of support to your entire team, such as debuffs and buffs, but honestly what just makes Mirabilis so good is that she is a mythic dancer, and she actually does her job. The one downside to Mirabilis is that she's not going to get mythic buffs, so she is weak to something like Braille Fjorm's Isolation, but other than that, she's just a great mythic dancer who's going to do her job, which is more than Triandra can do sometimes. SS Tier is where many of the most powerful mythics in the game reside. These heroes are game-changing and meta-defining. Many of these units are the best in their respective roles or respective Aether Raid season. Let's start off with our first offense mythic dancer, Plumeria, and Plumeria is just a phenomenal unit. Anytime you can combine 2 slots on an Aether Raid's team, that unit is going to be extremely valuable, and when you're able to get a dancer, it's even better. Plumeria is going to offer some good support, such as attack and resistance to allies within 5 rows and 3 columns, as well as when she dances, she's going to give +3 to all stats, and inflict -4 to all stats on the nearest foe within 4 spaces. What really makes Plumeria great is the versatility of having a dancer as a mythic. She's just going to fit into any team possible, no matter what you're doing, she's going to be a great mythic to have. And because of this versatility, Plumeria might be the best Asher mythic in the entire game, though personally I would argue there is one better. The major thing that held Plumeria back from going up higher in this tier list is the fact that she's not really used outside of Astra Season. In something like Chaos Season or Summoner Duels, there are just better dancers. Units like Harmonic Azura, Duo Peony, Harmonic Dorothea can do the same job as Plumeria of dancing, but just offer a ton more support. So even though Plumeria may be the best Astra mythic, she's going to stay in double S tier. Following a similar pattern, we have our other mythic dancer, Peony, and Peony is just a phenomenal unit just like Plumeria. She's going to do an amazing job dancing, she's going to offer those buffs, and more importantly, I think she is better than Plumeria because she can offer that formation buff when she dances, which can just allow a lot of mobility as well as a lot of plays that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And just like Plumeria, the reason why she's in double S tier and not higher is because even though she may be the best light mythic in the game, she's not really used outside of ether raids, as Duo Peony is essentially just a pure upgrade to her, offering almost all the same support but also having a duo skill that can dance again. And because of that, Peony is going to stay in double S tier, which is still amazing. But just to be very clear, Peony and Plumeria are amazing mythics, and if you're looking for someone to merge up, they are definitely some of the best choices you can make. We have yet another free-to-play mythic, Regan, and Regan is just a great unit. She's very versatile and can fit into pretty much any team, and she can even be seen in game modes outside of ether raids, such as Summoner Duels. This is largely due to just how much power Regan can have and how versatile she can be. Her combination of Canto 3 and Satyr Shell is going to allow her to go in and just snipe enemy opponents and then retreat to safety, and this is invaluable in a ton of different strategies. But even when she's not sniping things, she just offers a ton of support with that Canto. She can go in, destroy key buildings, and get out. She can reposition allies and then get out of the way as well. Honestly, Regan is just one of those mythics you're always happy to have on your team and will always offer some kind of contribution, even if it's just getting pots. Milla is the queen of isolation. This unit is so extremely powerful and became meta defining when she released. And even now, she's made a resurgence and become one of the best mythics you can invest into. Her preference skill Milla Turns Wheel is just going to offer isolation, allowing you to shut down dancers on the enemy team as long as they have less defense than her, which is pretty easy to do, though there are a few dancers who can be a bit problematic, such as Dancer Elegant. Even so, this is going to allow Milla to be an absolutely powerful mythic who can just cripple enemy teams and completely shut down their entire strategy. She can also offer a ton of support through Nurturing Breath, which is going to grant +2 stats to all allies within 7 versus 7 columns, as well as her extremely high bulk, which means she can often soak the Dark Shrine off of your tank. But what really pushed Milla up in the double S tier for me is that she is phenomenal in Chaos Season, as in Chaos Season there's a rule where you can only use one dancer, and because of that, isolation stocks have gone through the roof. So Milla can literally just shut down the only dancer on the enemy team, and then you can safely engage whichever way you want. Even though Milla had a minor setback in the movement meta, she has proven to be able to stand the test of time and is one of the best mythics in Light and Chaos Season. Next, we have the god of Gale Force herself, Thor. And Thor is just a phenomenal unit, one of the best units in the game easily. This is because she can offer some of the most powerful support in the entire game, while also being an amazing combat unit herself. Thor was like the final piece of Exodia when she came out, and really turned Gale Force into like one of the most popular strategies in ether raids. This is largely due to the power of Worldbreaker that can make Gale Force an extremely consistent strategy, removing the need to hit those heavy or flashing blade checks, which can be very difficult to do. Not only that, she's an axe unit herself, meaning she can Gale Force as well, and with the help of something like Winter Burning, she could be an excellent engagement unit, going in, doubling and destroying whatever's in her way, and then allowing the Gale Force train to start. But if that wasn't enough, Thor's also an amazing support unit, where she can work on something like a tank team with Worldbreaker support, granting that additional special cooldown charge, which can be amazing on tanks who are reliant on their specials either to secure kills, or units like Ascended Fjorm who are reliant on their defensive specials to survive enemy engagements. Thor is just an excellent mythic unit and can enable Gale Force strategies in Astra or Chaos Season, and that makes her invaluable in my opinion. Next up, we have the terror of the meta, Not herself. When Not was released, she literally warped the meta alongside Legendary Sigurd, introducing the movement meta, which just terrorized players as they weren't even able to play, as their teams were destroyed on turn 1. Fortunately for most people, Safety Fence did show up and kind of put that meta back into its place, but even so, Not is still a phenomenal mythic unit and a great unit on defense. Pathfinder is just very powerful, and while it was good on offense with Dagger, it's much better on defense. Not's Pathfinder can just extend the enemy range, which can be very difficult to deal with no matter what kind of strategy you are using, as it can just reduce the amount of room you have to safely engage, or to even set up your tanks so that your backline units aren't being sniped, or just have the entire enemy team run at your save tank. Not is just a phenomenal unit, and she's one of the best users of Pathfinder. And the reason why I have her so much higher than Dagger on this tier list is because she is amazing outside of her season as well. She's going to be a phenomenal unit on defense in Chaos Season, and also in Summoner Duels, where she can work as an amazing frontline unit. The bonus doubler built into her weapon, as well as the speed-based damage reduction, makes it much more difficult for her to be taken down compared to Dagger, which means it's much easier to set up Pathfinder for the rest of your team. One of the major reasons trenches have become so prominent in Summoner Duels is because of the power of Pathfinder, and while Duo Dagger may be the best Pathfinder unit in Summoner Duels, Not is a close second. The final unit in double S tier is going to be Medius, and I was very tempted to put him in triple S to be honest, because this unit is just phenomenal. Medius himself is a very powerful unit who can dish out a ton of damage and also just take a ton of hits, as his preference skill Assured Birth is going to offer him up to 60% damage reduction, making him an extremely tanky, powerful unit. Not only that, Shadow Breath is going to allow him to have the guaranteed follow-up attack, but most importantly, it's going to offer On Guard, a new effect, which can neutralize damage outside of combat. And why this is such a phenomenal thing is it can completely shut down things like bolt traps or bolt towers, which were deadly threats to your Ether Raid's defense team. And because he's in Dark Season, he does a great job on something like a Bridal Catcher Ball, where you typically run 2 save units, and one of the best ways to get through that was the Bolt Tower. But now Metis has turned that off, and made this strategy extremely powerful, and one of the most prominent defenses used in Ether Raid's Dark Season. If that was enough though, he also introduced Cancel Control, one of the most powerful meta skills recently introduced. This makes him great at shutting down hit and run strategies, as well as being a great unit in Summoner duels, where he can shut down any type of cancel unit. Metis is just a great unit no matter what game mode he's in, and I only expect to see more of him as dragons become more and more prominent in the meta. We have reached SSS Tier, and with it, the 3 best mythics in the game. I was a bit hesitant to put Asker this high up on the tier list, but in all honesty, the more I use him, the more phenomenal he becomes. This unit is just completely broken and just can do pretty much everything, which is usually a good sign. The first thing we have to talk about is the amazing support Asker can offer through his preference skill, Open Domain. Open Domain has some of the most powerful support in the entire game. First, it's going to grant Resonance Blades and Resonance Shields to Asker himself and all allies within 2 spaces of him, but more importantly, it's going to offer a Times Pulse effect to himself as well as units within 2 spaces, as long as there's a unit who isn't from heroes within 2 spaces of him, which is an extremely easy condition to meet. Now, the first thing we have to acknowledge is just how powerful Times Pulse is itself. And being able to grant that not only to yourself, but to all allies within 2 spaces is just completely broken, to be honest. One of the major reasons why Duochrome is one of the best units in the entire game is because he can offer special cooldown reduction to his allies whenever he uses to change fate. Now, Asker kind of does a similar thing, but he can do it in AoE. So not only is it going to affect him, it's going to also affect allies within 2 spaces, which is extremely powerful. Now, it is a bit different, obviously, because Duochrome can charge specials that are lower on cooldown, while Asker's effect will only work if the cooldown's at maximum charge. It's extremely powerful in Light Season if you are trying to run a Gale Force team, as it can allow units who typically can struggle to Gale Force because they don't have special cooldown built into their weapon, to have that 4 cooldown Gale Force, which is massive. But that's not even all of it. The Resonance Shield and Resonance Blade is often ignored, but it's extremely powerful effect. Essentially, it's going to grant +4 to all stats in combat to those units, and Resonance Shield's even gonna stop a follow-up on the first combat, which makes your entire team more bulky and more difficult to deal with, especially Asker, who is just an amazing unit in combat. Speaking of combat, let's talk about how good Asker is as a combat unit. He is just phenomenal. He's gonna get special cooldown from his weapon, he's gonna get +5 all his stats, but most importantly, he's gonna get 20% true damage based off his defense, and 20% true defense, as I like to call it. Essentially, he reduces the damage he takes by 20% of his defense because it works differently than other damage reduction, which can be pierced by things like lethality or deadeye. Not only that, he is an infantry beast unit, meaning he gets +7 true damage whenever his special triggers, as well as just having a tempo effect whenever he's transformed. This makes Asker into a phenomenal combat unit, and who is extremely difficult to deal with. And this is why I have Asker so high up on this tier list. He's great in Gale Force, he's great in tanking, he's great at just supporting. In Chaos Season, it's the same. He can be on defense or offense and just do a phenomenal job. But even in Summoner duels, Asker is just one of a kind. He's such a problematic unit who can be an amazing frontline unit as well as just offering a myriad of support to the entire team. Asker is just the full package. An amazing combat unit with some of the most powerful support in the entire game. What more could you possibly ask for? If you thought that was the only beast unit who's going to be in SSS Tier, you would be wrong, as our free-to-play queen Ashe is here as well. I'm honestly surprised that she's a free-to-play unit because she is just completely broken and can be so versatile that she can fit onto any team in any game mode, which is not something you can say about very many units. Ashe's preference skill, Opening Retainer, is going to allow allies within 2 spaces to teleport any place within 2 spaces of her, as well as granting a joint drive attack effect. This allows Ashe to just be good on whatever team you need her to be on. And this isn't just limited to Light Season. She's great in Chaos Season, on offense and defense, and she's one of the best units possible to run in Summoner duels. She can run all types of different builds and be an extremely difficult unit to take down, which means that she's an excellent frontline unit, as she can then offer teleport for everyone behind her to just go up and destroy the enemy team. Personally, I love to run this Miracle build I'm showing right now in Summoner duels, and does a great job of just applying pressure to the entire enemy team, as all my nukes from the backline can just teleport up to the front. Ashe is just a one-of-a-kind unit, and there's really no other unit who can take her place. There is no unit quite as versatile as she is, and there are very few units I'm more happy to use in every single game mode. Our final Mythic in SS Tier, and the best Mythic in the game, in my opinion, is going to be Elamine. And Elamine is just a completely busted and broken unit. Her introduction into the game completely changed the Mythic Ashe season as we knew it, and the amount of crazy powerful support effects she has is just ridiculous. Elamine's false start can essentially counter half of the entire game. She can turn off things like Time's Pulse, Infantry Pulse, Duma's Upheaval, Bridal Catcher's Triangle attacks. Any effect that says at start of turn, Elamine can turn off, and that is insanely powerful. What really makes Elamine the full package is she essentially took Flame and just made her better. Her preference skill, Holy Ground, is going to offer 30% damage reduction to any ally within 2 spaces, as well as defense and resistance +4. With the current meta revolving around save balls, Elamine is just the best mythic to run on those teams, as she will just make them extremely more powerful. But that alone wouldn't make Elamine the best mythic in the game in my opinion. What makes Elamine the best mythic now is that she is the best unit to run in Chaos Season. She just shuts down literally everything the enemy team could possibly want to do. No matter what the enemy team wants to do, from running a Catcher Ball, to running Hardy Fighter save units, to even using something like Infantry Pulses to get big specials off, Elamine can shut it all down very easily. And this makes Elamine an invaluable mythic and one of the most powerful and busted units in the entire game. I cannot recommend Elamine more. She is so powerful she has made Ether Raids boring, and because of that, I rank her as the #1 mythic in the entire game. And with that, my mythic tier list is complete. 28 mythics ranked from SSS all the way down to C tier. Do you agree with my rankings, or would you change it up? In your opinion, who is the best mythic in the game? But more importantly, who is your favorite? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. It helps destroy the evil that is the YouTube algorithm, and helps the channel grow. This has been Oblivion, and I'll catch you all later with more Fire Emblem Heroes.